Good to see you too.
Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats. And these are just conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA USA. With me on the porch is Jill Wood. Good morning, afternoon, wherever you are, Jill.
Good morning.
Jill
It's
is
10:30.
the founder. Oh, it's 10:30 your time. Okay, it's 11:30 where I am. Who knows when this will air, but someone will see it. Jill is the founder and manages the Adventure Play, an outdoor child-directed after-school program at the Parish School in Houston, Texas, where she also serves as the school librarian. She has such a rich history. Established in 2008, Adventure Play is modeled after adventure playgrounds in the UK and uses the professional approach of Playwork to support children's play. So if you've listened to another Porch Play Chat by Maynell or one by another person who runs actually the Playworker certification program in the UK, you're going to have another reintroduction to Playwork today. Playwork is a way that adults support play instead of interfere in play. Jill's school is one of only a handful of such playgrounds in the US, and the only one based at a school for neurodiverse people, which I hope she also expands on. Jill's also the founder of the Bayou City Play, a group of artists, librarians, therapists who partner with organizations to support and improve play opportunities for Houston's children. Bayou City Play has collaborated with public libraries, schools, parks, and hospitals since 2014 to promote the importance of children's voices and culture through community gatherings and education. She's also a regional consultant and speaker for Pop-Up Adventure Play, a UK-based organization that advances the field of play work through training, presentations, research, and publications. So Jill's written a great book, Adventures in Risk. And so please go get that, because it really does a great job of comparing risk of injury between adventure playgrounds and traditional playgrounds, which I think is one of the things that people always say, oh, well, we can't do that, it's too dangerous. And so I beg you to go get that book. So anyway, today, Jill's
I wish it was a book. It's an article.
It's an article. Okay, go grab that article. I'll find it and put it in
good.
The YouTube show script too for people. So today, Jill is going to describe the Parish School. And then she's going to go in and talk to us about adventurous play, risk, and play work. So help us understand why play work is so important and why risk taking is so important.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Those are big topics, and we've got 30 minutes. I'm going to burn through what I can. But to begin with, I work at a school called the Parish School, and we're in Houston, Texas. We serve kids with communication delays and learning differences, different disabilities that are based in speech and language. And we opened our program in 2008 as sort of just aftercare. I was the librarian at the time, and they needed something after school. So I started reading about different options, and there is like a really surprising and wonderful correlation between librarianship and play work. And I can send you a link to something I wrote about that, because librarians promote independence, and they promote a child's right to choose their own reading material or visuals or whatever their bodies and their brains need through a library environment. So it was sort of a natural jump for me when I started reading about play and adventure playgrounds. I thought, this sounds right. This sounds like the way kids should be spending their time after school.
Mm-hmm.
So we started with just a few kids and in 2008 and not very many loose parts, but 3 acres, three like that can only happen in Houston, Texas, in the middle of a city. But we're 12 miles from downtown and we have these 3 acres of swamp and the children come after school and they play. And we're now at 65 children and they're from the school, but also the surrounding community. And we use an adventure play model. So, and when I first opened the playground, there just wasn't much out there. There were books
Mm-hmm.
and 1 or 2 websites. And so I just started reading and reading and reading and then came across Playwork and it answered probably like a year and a half in. It answered a lot of the questions that I had
Mm-hmm.
about how we could best serve children in our environment. And so since then, I've sort of become I sing about Playwork. I feel like it's really saved our site and made me a better advocate for children and sort of made it part of our school culture now. So whereas I think there was a lot of resistance in early days, just sort of there was just some education that everyone needed about what was happening out there with all the junk and the 3 acres and the mud and the crawfish and the so we worked on that education piece. I got better at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really I've become more and more passionate about adventurous play because I just see it at work. I really am fortunate because we do have sort of an ideal situation. We have kids come to us after school or they get dropped off.
Mm-hmm.
Children come to us for years and years and years. So we have kids for 6 years at a time. So they really build up the culture on our site and create names for everything and rules for everything. And they pass those down through ages because we have 12-year-olds and we have 6-year-olds and they teach each other how to rough and tumble. They teach each other, how to play different games. And it's really an amazing situation to have that kind of time and space, but it's made me more passionate about figuring out ways for other kids to have those things.
Yes.
Because we do have a very ideal situation after all these years. And I have a 9-year-old and she's in public school and I see how ideal our situation is.
Mm-hmm.
I make my husband schlep her to the playground so
Mm-hmm.
that she has that time with us. But again, that's an unusual situation. And Playwork also sort of has made me passionate about seeing what barriers to play there are in all different kinds of environments.
Yes. And when we
So,
talk about play and play work, it is not adult planned. It
no,
is a not adult interference.
no,
It is.
it's
So
a
talk
very,
a little bit about that. So because
yeah,
people will go, what do you mean they are on 3 acres and there's mud pits and there's all
and
this stuff?
saws and
Yes,
hammers and
saws and
nails
hammers.
and
What do you mean that what is it? What is that play work or play worker
yeah,
actually? What's the difference between a teacher saying, here are your choices and
right,
a play worker?
yeah. Such a good question. And always such a huge part of Playwork is reflection. And so Playwork was developed on UK adventure playgrounds and is a low intervention approach.
Mhm.
So while we're there and we are constantly checking the site and we're sort of keeping track of everything that's going on and making ourselves available if kids need us, we are working as hard as we can not to interrupt the play because in Playwork, we know and believe that a child's own motivated, directed play is thick it's perfectly designed in many ways if given the right, if everything in the environment is laid out pretty well as possible, then I think, we believe that the children know what to do.
Mhm. And so it goes back to
And
Bev Boss saying you need to
that they
trust
expert.
children, trust them,
Yes.
trust children.
Yeah.
Okay, you're kind of breaking up a little bit. Do you want to
The
stop your video
process.
so we can hear you?
Sure,
And
sure,
we'll see
sure.
what happens.
Okay. How's that?
There. Okay. All right. Well, I'll let you know because I love your face. So, but let's see if I think your words are very important too. So if I were to say I'm a play worker, and of course there are certification programs in the UK for it, which I think are really important. And I know Lisa Murphy is in that play worker certification program. I would say my role is to be available to offer assistance when asked,
Mhm.
but not to interfere
Yeah.
in what children are doing, at least not immediately. So what happens if on the adventure playground, there's a child that may be using the saw in picking it up and flinging it around?
Right.
How, because I know that would be a question. How would
Yeah.
the play worker handle that situation? Because I imagine it's much different than what we would
Yeah.
typically do.
Yeah. So, well, first I wanted to say that we are there to be available, but I think what I've learned over the years is that the second piece of that that's just as big as being available and maintaining the space is holding space. It's sort of a term that we use, or holding the container for children, because so much of what has become my job is protecting that time, protecting that space, protecting the intentions of the children. And a lot of that involves education and interaction with adults, which I had to learn how to do, and Playwork helped me find the language to do that. But if a child were sort of flinging around a saw, the first thing that we do when a child gets to our playground is and I can share it. We have a picture of a child holding a tool, and then a circle. I'm here. Let me see. And then a circle
Yay.
around their body, because what we want to do is we tell kids that they think about their bodies plus a tool. And so we come from like an educational piece, like, I don't want to say educational. We are always coming from a place of assuming good intent, and then thinking, oh, they just need a little information. And I think that's how we approach like 90% of the more heavier interventions we do, is if we do step in, we're really careful to assume that the intent is good, and then to assume that there's just some pieces of information that might be missing. And so we would say, like, we have this graphic of a child holding tools, and we want children to know that their bodies extend further when they're holding a tool, because that seems to be one of the most confusing parts of tools when children first start, is knowing that when they're swinging their bodies around with a tool, that their arm just got longer. And so that's sort of how we frame it. And then we would give them that information, and we would step back and let them take that information in, and you use it however they choose. And we're really careful not to deliver that with any judgment. We practice being really neutral and saying, hey, I saw that your arm was out with the saw and it almost ran into this guy right here. Just wanted to let you know that when you're holding a saw, your arm gets about a foot longer everywhere you go, or and that when you're interacting with the environment, it changes how you interact with the environment. But we don't want, we never teach how to use a saw, and I think that's really interesting. We will if a child asks. If a child
Right.
came up to me and was like, "Is there a way to use this saw that would make it easier?" I might say, "Yes." You don't want to push down on it, or you want to. We have pole saws because those are tend to be easier for kids.
Mhm.
If you want to give pressure on the pole, that kind of thing. But only if a child is seeking that, because 9 times out of 10, they're just carrying that saw around because it feels good.
Well, you just said, I don't know, 35 things that were so beautiful. First, don't think the child is trying to hurt someone, right? So know that their intentions, always approach it that their intention is good, not hurtful. And I think
Yeah.
that we get so judgmental about those things because we're worried someone's going to get hurt. But
Yeah.
the other thing that you do, and what I've heard from other adventure playgrounds, is you use what we call in early childhood terminology is indirect guidance. You set up the environment with the tools they need to be successful before they walk into the adventure playground. So
Yes.
you have those visual images
Hmm.
of how you hold the tool or how you use the tool,
Hmm.
which is an amazing gift to children because they have it right there in front of them, and it gives them some information on what they need to think about as they're
Yes.
using the tool. It's beautiful,
Oh, I
beautiful.
love
So
that.
that indirect guidance, before children even walk, if you're afraid children are going to run around the classroom in your class, then you break up the space before they even walk in. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no path to run in circles. So
Right, right.
run
And
in circles, but
yeah, no, I think, and we that came from a place of needing to tell kids all the time, because we have sort of a rolling enrollment situation. So we have kids starting off through the whole year.
yeah.
And what we found is that no matter how we delivered that information, it always felt, because we hadn't established a relationship with the children, and this is really important.
Mhm,
Playwork is so much about relationships, that
mhm.
we were meeting a child and our first interaction with them was telling them a bunch of rules, and it felt like exactly the wrong thing to be doing. Here we were saying, this is your space, and then we're saying, but don't do this and this, so right off the bat we were like, how can we deliver this information so it's available but it doesn't feel onerous, and children have a sense that we're here for them, but we don't have a traditional relationship like adult child relationship. We're trying to level out that hierarchy as much as possible while acknowledging that there is always a hierarchy when it comes to adults, and our effect is huge.
Yeah, huge, right.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so on their 3 acres, and they come from what, like 3:30 to 6 or
Hmm.
um,
Exactly.
every day. So, which is, oh, what a gift for children, especially after they've been in a structured environment all day to have that freedom. It's what
Yeah.
every child needs. And it's on 3 acres and you have different areas, right? Yeah. I heard you say talk about the crawfish, which I love as long as I don't have to feel them and get into them. I love to eat them though. And you have a building area, construction area. Can you tell us what else is out there?
Sure, sure. And we don't have any areas set up. What we do is, and it's really, I mean, it's one of the things that can be hardest at first, to take in, is that there are saws everywhere. There are there are hammers everywhere. Our goats are in a pen, but we let them out when the grass is really good and we
Yeah.
want them to have a treat. So we have, and the crawfish are sort of everywhere. I can send a photo, because in Houston we are just built on a giant swamp, and
Wow. Right. Yeah.
it is truly a giant swamp. And so these beautiful little crawfish castles come up out of the ground, and it's like this muddy tower, and
Ooh,
right in the middle is a hole. And so at some point, I think it was one of the kids said, you can catch a crawfish if you have a hot dog. It's like, really?
really?
I'm from Los Angeles. I did not know this. So we started making crawfish hot dogs available, and they would tie them on a string and pull out and get them to come out during crawfish season.
goodness.
It's
Oh, that
really
is
sweet.
hysterical. Well, and the other thing I'm sure that happens is that the older kids who have been there for
Yep,
several years are also saying, oh, here's, and they don't do it intentionally. They're not saying, watch me model this, but
yeah.
children are learning from what they're seeing older kids do.
Absolutely. It's so important. I think the multi-age piece is so important, and we isolate children by age all the time, and it's such a huge mistake. And we do it out of fear, which is what so much of these sort of restrictions adults put on children, they come from a place of fear. And a lot of times it's good intent as well,
Mhm.
but it's mixed in with fear and lack of knowledge. And I think that, on our site, I was going to tell you, we have some structures that are built now, and they're more like skeletons of structures that
Okay.
kids build onto. But then we also have tons of kid-made structures that pop up and fall down and deteriorate, or people take them apart because they need the pieces for something else. And so it is just a constantly evolving environment. I look at pictures from 2 years ago, and it's like a completely different playground, just because there's just constant movement. And I think that's another thing that we educate a lot on, is sort of what a child space looks like. And it doesn't look like completed projects all the time. And I do so much education on that, because people see the hammers and the saws, and they some parents will expect to see, like, are they building a house, or are they doing X, Y, or Z? And really, some days they're just sawing a piece of wood in half to see how it feels, or to feel the pressure, or you
Mhm.
know and I think that we have those skeleton sort of structures. They're basically big posts in the ground that kids can build off of, and we have those just in case there's a kid who wants to pop something up really quickly and take it back down. Because honestly, the goal is for kids to get to what they want, um, and to do it in a way that's safe and that is theirs. And
Mhm.
sometimes, like, what we've discovered over the years is that, like, the building process, the mechanics of building aren't really of interest to a lot of people. They are to some, and there's always like one or two kids who are super into like constructing,
Mhm.
and and again, like, they are modeling those things just by doing them in our environment. But um trying to think of other things. We have a zip line, we have a giant hammock, we have a sand area with hoses, we have a garden, and all those things have happened very slowly. And I like to tell people that we've been around since 2008, and we add things in as children request them. And
Mhm.
it really, I think people come to our space and they see it, and they want that right away for their kids. But for us, I have to let people know that it was a really slow building process, and it started with that education piece. Um, and sort of saying, like, I know we don't clean up at the end of a day, but here's why,
Mhm.
before we ever brought out a bunch of loose parts, because it looks crazy to a lot of adults. So, it looks completely chaotic to a lot of adults. So we need to educate on that piece, and how a child's aesthetic is different than an adult aesthetic. Um and so, yeah, we have like half made projects all over. We have things that kids are passionate about that they do for years on end. We have areas of the playground that were named 10 years ago that they still use because they just keep passing it down. Um,
Mhm.
and then we have big projects that start and they end less than an hour later. And so we have to kind of let all that happen as adults. And so much of the work we do in Playwork is looking inwards and saying, like, why do I want them to finish this so badly?
Mhm.
And I say that as me, like,
Mhm.
for every piece of education I give to another adult, I'm constantly having to look inwards and be like, okay, I have so
Mhm.
many ingrained ideas about what play should look like and what children's time, how they should spend their time. And I have as an administrator, I have pressures from parents, and I'm feeling those, and I'm feeling pressure from the business office, and I'm feeling, and like analyzing those and thinking like, how can I hold this space and protect this space from those things in me? And I think that that is so important to play work and really valuable. This idea that we bring so much into an environment as adults, and it's so
Mhm.
important for us to kind of analyze that and look at it, and it's very humbling.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, and I
Yeah,
think the other thing that, as adults, we want to see the product, and that's because of our
yeah,
crazy lives, right?
yeah,
You wake up in the morning, you have a mental list or you have a written list. You have to
yeah.
get through boom, 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 boom. That is not where children are.
No,
They have a list maybe about, oh, tomorrow I want to build this, and oh, that didn't work
yeah,
out, so I'm going to change it.
yeah,
That's how they get to the ability to do the wake up in the morning and have a list and get things done. But they don't do that as children. And so again,
no,
it's those misperceptions that we sometimes struggle with that make us inhibit what actually is happening if we just let it happen.
that's
Right?
right. Yeah. And the pathway is always a surprise, even after I have to do the math, 15 years.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
the kids' ways of getting to things and figuring things out is always a surprise to me. So I've learned it becomes easier and easier to hold back because you see these beautiful, windy, roundabout, circular paths that children go through to get to what they want and what they need. And if you see it enough, to trust it. And I think that that is probably the hardest piece for any of our play workers to do, any of our parents, the teachers on our campus. And then with Bayou City Play, when I go out into the community, so much of that is, I know this looks like a child like picking at a blade of grass for half an hour, and that's hard, but it's really important and we have to protect it. And
Mhm.
so I've spent so much time trying to figure out how to frame those things so that I can hold that space for children, and
I
that
love the I love the protect piece. And
yeah.
when I was on the NAYC governing board, one of my peers that was in my class would say our job is to protect childhood, right? That's what
Mhm,
she
mhm.
said, this is my goal of being on this board, is to protect childhood. And
Yeah,
so if we
totally.
can think about that, holding space
Yeah,
and allowing things to happen
yep,
on the child's timeline versus our timeline,
yeah,
and
yeah,
recognize that the most important thing we're doing is protecting that time for them,
absolutely. So
then
important.
I think that helps. I think that helps people relax more.
Yeah, yeah, and I even tell adults, like, if I'm doing trainings for teachers, I'll say, "I know your list is long and you've gotta move through it, but is that the way it should always be too?"
Mhm,
Right? Because if adults aren't playing, they are losing touch with that really valuable process themselves, and we still
mhm,
have that in us as adults, and we still need it. And the best play workers I know, are the ones who play.
mhm.
It for themselves outside of work. When they leave our site, they go and take care of themselves too through play, whatever that might be defined
Mhm.
as for them. If it's reading, if it's cooking, if it's, spending time with loved ones. Um, I have recently discovered that holding my daughter's guinea pigs is very calming for
Very
me.
calming. There you go. Okay.
So I have
Yeah,
guinea pig time now, you
yeah.
know? Who would have
Well,
thought?
we have lots of cats in our house. We're the crazy cat people. And
Yeah.
so and every cat is different, just like every child is different, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
each of them have different needs, and each of them need their cuddle time at a different
Yeah.
part time of the day. And so I'll say, oh, it's Sprocket's cuddle time. And Sprocket will jump up on and he'll lay down and purr and purr and purr. And then he needs it for like, I don't know, 8 or 10 minutes. And then his cuddle time is done. for that moment. And then another one will jump up and Weasel doesn't want to be in your lap. Sprockle wants to be in your lap. Weasel does not want to be in your lap, but he wants to be right there by you,
I know.
playing by you so that you can touch him and talk to him. And he's so happy. And
Cats
then
are so good at that, right? At
they
knowing their boundaries and
they have their
taking
needs
care of
met.
themselves.
And then
Yeah.
Riddle's the 18-pound one. He's huge. And so he has to find a way to get in your lap so he'll fit. It's just hysterical. And I tell people children are, much smarter than cats. Cats are very smart, but children have the same kind of needs. Some of them want to sit in your lap. Some of them want to stand right by you. Some of them want to not have anything to do with you and you don't think they like you.
Absolutely. And they need a ton of space. Right. Yeah, that humbling piece. It is so true. And I think the day I realized that I wasn't the point, I know it sounds horrible and blunt, but it's really like something that we talk about, where I need to create a relationship with children so they feel freedom. And when we have established that relationship, that they know that I'm going to give them space and that they get to feel as angry as they need to feel, as long as their bodies are safe, that they get to, feel ridiculous joy at doing whatever that might, whatever it is that might bring that for them. Once we establish that, I try to step back. Unless a child needs a hug and they come to me to get it.
And they come to you, right?
Yeah. And I remember in the first few years, there was a little girl who came up to me and she sat in my lap and kind of nuzzled into me. And I thought, oh, this is so sweet and so lovely. And I gave her a big hug and she was like, can you not do that? I just need to sit. And I was like, I got you.
Not be offended by it. They'll tell you what they need if you just listen. And it doesn't always have to be verbal, right? I just need
a cozy laugh, right? You didn't want to be gripped.
Don't squeeze me.
Yeah. And
yesterday, I was in a preschool classroom yesterday with one of my students, and it was center time, so I was playing with children, right? And they would bring all these things over to me, and I'd say, "What is that?" And they'd say, "Oh, here, let us show you." And they would show me, and they had these. It was a state-funded pre-K classroom, and they had robots like what is the robot movie where that Transformers? They had Transformers that turned into letters.
Wow.
It was fascinating.
That's cool.
And she said, I also have them that turn into numbers. I'm like, oh my God. But they were playing with the Transformers, and then they would say, you want to know what else it does? I said, tell me. And they would say, look, see if you can guess. And so they would manipulate the little Transformer robot. And I would say, is that a letter? They'd say, yeah, what is that? It was hysterical. And they were like, here, we're gonna test you again. And I'm like, oh boy, they've heard that word before. And so they would turn all the transforming letters into letters for me. And then they'd say, what can we do with these letters? And I said, I don't know. Which are the, and we just had these wonderful conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Children.
Yes. And
they were interested in doing, not me saying, oh, we could make letters with these.
Absolutely. And one of the ways you did that is like a key playwork idea that Dr. Fraser Brown talks about. He talks about negative capability. And it's so fun once you realize that you have that is a really important tool. That's when you get to go up to an environment and a kid tells you to be a monster and you say, what does that look like? What am I supposed to do? And that's when they tell you, okay, you're going to growl. No, not that kind of growl. That's a horrible growl, and you kind of like let them take the lead. And because the best thing is, it's true. Adults are not as good at play as children. And I think once we get into that mindset and are with a child and realize that they are the experts in that moment, we get to be a learner. And
Oh,
you got to be a learner in that moment. You were like, tell me what is happening here, because I have no idea.
I have no idea what this is. I've never seen these before.
Yeah.
And there was another cute little one who was putting some rings and fitting them together. And then he was like, watch what I can do. And I said, what are you going to do? He said, watch. And so he went over to a friend who was a happy play partner, and he used them as handcuffs and handcuffed her hands together. And I said, wow, those have many uses. He said, watch, I can show you something else they can do. And then we just went on and on and on, and
That's so
not you should
great.
be handcuffing your friends. No, I
Right.
could hear that in another teacher's voice,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah. Yeah.
and totally interrupting what, and
Yeah.
I always say not on the adventure playgrounds, because I think there's so much more interesting things to explore. But in a classroom, the teacher's the best toy if the teacher knows how to play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking about that, how you assumed good intent in that
Mhm.
moment.
Yeah,
You assumed that you know, that the handcuffs were just one of the things,
just a
one of
thing.
the cool things.
Yeah,
That
they
it
could do.
wasn't, yeah,
And
that
the
it
person
wasn't
who was handcuffed was smiling from ear to ear. She was happy to be handcuffed.
right.
It,
Exactly.
and so, I just think we have to just take a step back. And I love how you talked about holding space
It's really important.
and
And that's,
protecting
yeah,
what we
yep.
need.
It's
Okay, well, Jill,
really
you have to come back, and I want you to send me pictures of
okay.
Adventure Playground. I'll stick them in the Facebook page.
Okay. And I don't think we even talked about risk. We need to do that.
We didn't, but we have to do that. So
Okay.
I have dates for June, July, and August. I'll send them to you. I
Okay.
know it's like once you get started,
I know there's so much. It's
there's
so
so
rich.
much we need to dig out and piece
Yeah.
together. So wow, that was truly amazing. Stay right there while I close this out. So
Okay.
to learn more about IPA USA and to find out where all these wonderful Porch Play Chats are, go to our website at ipausa.org. Up in that top right-hand corner, be a friend on our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram. I don't even know what Instagram is, but that's what they tell me I should say. And magically, every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. So until next time, keep on playing.